The following episode of WebDM contains mature themes and adult language. Viewer discretion is advised.
So let's say you're playing some Dungeons and Dragons and you want to play an evil campaign. Well, first things first. I'm Jonathan Pruitt, and this is Jim Davis. And we're gonna kick down the door and play some evil D&D. Jim and Pruitt being evil. So Jim,
Yeah.
in D&D, what is evil?
Gosh. So in 5th edition, there's less of a way to detect someone's alignment explicitly, like there was in prior editions of D&D. And in some ways, that's much more freeing than it was. A lot of people don't like alignment, and I've said many times on the show that I love alignment. And I wish it didn't have as bad a reputation as it does, because I find it to be empowering and interesting, not a straitjacket and stifling.
You're limiting me, man.
You're limiting me, man.
I can't change.
You know,
you can.
It's not. And alignment describes the cosmic struggle that exists in the D&D world, and that's from the literature that Gygax and Arneson used to create their mythology and to create this game world, and chaos and law, good and evil. These are things that exist objectively in Dungeons and Dragons. Whether or not they are projected from the outer planes onto the material plane or are emanations going the opposite direction, that's up to an individual campaign or DM to figure out. But to me, I like a world where evil is objectively exists. At the same time, I like a world where mortals, which I define as those creatures who have free will and are not and have an end point to their life at some point, do not, they don't fall in that objective range. So orcs are evil because their culture is brutal and harsh and rapacious. Drow are evil because Lolth has manipulated their society to the degree where they prize cruelty and deceit and cunning and advancement over someone else's interests over other things. Take a drow out of that environment, raise them in a different environment, show them that there's an alternative way. For one, get them out of the influence of Lolth's, clutches, and they won't be evil.
You can have some Driss running around.
You can have some Driss. You can have good goblins. You can have orcs who are just, misunderstood. But at the same time, demons exist. Devils exist. It is objectively evil to animate the dead using necromancy. It is objectively evil to cavort with fiends and summon them into the world. So I like having both of those extremes in the same campaign world.
Okay, so with that in mind, you want to run an evil campaign.
You want to run an evil campaign.
How do you want to be evil in your D&D campaign?
There's a lot of different ways to do it, and I would say to kind of lay a foundation for it, I wouldn't do an evil campaign or run an evil campaign with a group of randos at my favorite local game store.
No.
We're not doing that.
No.
I'm playing.
It's a good way to find some stranger who's really into some sick shit.
Who's really into some sick shit.
And he just wants to describe it to other people.
Or just wants to mess with you.
Yeah.
I'm playing with people who I trust, who I'm friends with, who we know what our boundaries are, and we respect each other. So that when you sit down to start an evil campaign, you really, with the people you're playing with, it's like, okay, what's on the table? Is slavery on the table? Is sexual assault and rape on the table? Is murder on the table?
Fade to black, but yeah.
Are you good? Which parts of those do you fade to black on? Which parts are you explicit on? Every table is going to be different. But I would say that if there's anyone who says, yep, this is a red flag for me, then you say, okay, that one, if it happens in the game, we fade to black. And everything else is up on the table. It's an evil game. You should feel like you can let your sort of dark side free in an evil game and let your whatever kind of weird, messed up, sort of Breaking Bad-esque trail of darkness you want to go down, you can do that. So in terms of types of evil games, I mean, there's just the right bastards kind of game, just like they're not explicitly evil, they're not out to advance some evil cause, but they are selfish, self-centered, self-serving. They're not going to do, the adventurers aren't going to do things for free.
They're murder hobos.
They're murder hobo. This is the classic murder hobo game. And in some ways, the murder hobo game is incredibly fun to play in. It's very freeing.
It's consequence-free, pretty much.
Consequence-free gaming.
Morally consequence-free.
Right. You don't care what sort of trail of destruction or devastation you're leaving in your path. You don't care that the villagers need your help. They can't afford to pay you. And so maybe you're mercenaries in a very explicit sense. In a lot of ways, older versions of D&D support this play more. because for the most part, you're just you're going to a location and you're extracting treasure from it. Doesn't matter if you're good. Doesn't matter if you're not. As opposed to more of the second edition onward, where there's like the epic quest for good. I see that more as the influence of Dragonlance on Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh yeah.
Where, for whatever reason, it's hard to imagine, say, a Tyranny of Dragons game being an evil campaign, unless you wanted to play the role of the Cult of the Dragon. You work your way up through one of the factions, maybe you're allied with some dragons, attacking the caravan, guarding the treasure, fighting off groups of adventurers, until eventually you've gotten to the point where you're integral to the creation of the ritual that's going to summon Tiamat into the world, and the climax of the campaign is fighting off the alliance of the Harpers and the Zentarum and the Lord's Alliance who are trying to stop you. That would be an evil campaign for Tyranny of Dragons. So we've got Right Bastards campaign, sort of murder hobos. We've got the epic quest for evil. Do enough evil deeds in this world so that I saturate it, so that I'm going to bring this town from the material plane through the astral into the first layer of the abyss. We're just going to soak this place in so much chaos and evil that it ends up in the abyss. That would be kind of an epic quest for evil game.
Yeah.
I'm going to assemble these items of power in order to use them to take over the world. Epic quest for evil. Those might be pretty fun. I have a hard time seeing how they'd be sustainable in the long term.
Right.
But who knows? Maybe it'd be fun to just do a couple of quick sessions of it.
Well, yeah. I mean, the whole epic quest for evil. I mean, that's kind of that character I had, Tobias the Ebonfoe,
right?
Who became Tobias the Fiend once he put on a ring.
Once he put on that ring,
and was led basically with like a carrot and a stick.
Yeah.
Like, I need you to accumulate all these items.
A lot of ways the evil campaign is, it's more about what the players do in their actions necessarily than the types of people that they're interacting with. So let's take something like killing. Killing in Dungeons & Dragons is obviously not an evil act. Paladins can kill evil monsters all day long, and it doesn't cause them to lose their alignment or lose their special powers. So the act of killing obviously isn't an evil act.
Right.
But there is somewhere where killing becomes murder, that it becomes an evil act.
Right.
If murder isn't evil, why are all the gods of murder evil? The kind of situation. I would say evil acts include animating the dead. You're bringing an evil creature into existence.
Yeah.
And if you don't control this evil creature once a day by casting a spell on it, it will slip free of your bonds and go after the nearest living thing it finds.
Right.
This is not just an animate corpse that sits there when you're not actively controlling it. It is an evil thing that will try to kill someone unless you're actively telling it, no, Mr. Skeleton, you got to stay over in that corner.
Yeah.
And
Keep your teeth together.
Keep your teeth together. Summoning a Quasit into the world isn't going to be that big of a deal, but letting that Quasit do whatever it wants, as our very own vampire necromancer did with her familiar,
and out of the abyss,
is enough to cause that Quasit, when it returns to the abyss, to spontaneously become a higher order demon, because it's just like, my mortal let me do whatever I wanted.
As long as I didn't hurt her and her friends.
As long as I didn't hurt her and her friends, she didn't care what happened, and so
that's kind of evil.
Yeah,
starting a race war.
Starting a race war,
to
like
feed
Leviathan did.
to feed a sword.
Yes, so that's a good line for killing. Killing, not that evil. Purposefully going into the Darrow ghetto of Gracklestug.
Every 2 to 3 days.
Every 2 to 3 days, sneaking in there, slaying a Darrow to appease the sword Black Razor,
or a couple.
Because
a couple times I just went into a bar and started a fight.
Just start a fight and just kill them is enough to push Rovian over the edge of just like self-centered, self-serving into serial killer evil.
Right.
And he's dextering it up over in the Darrow ghetto.
Right.
All the while they're like, who's killing us? Someone's sneaking down in here and doing it. Must be those Dwergar. And then eventually it erupts, thanks to Demogorgon's influence, into a full-blown race war.
Or when Tony let her blood slaves go.
Or when Tony let First off, keeping slaves, particularly having vampires keep slaves that they purposefully feed on, then scaring them into saying that you can leave, but it's the Underdark. Where would you go? You're better off staying with me and let me feed on you. Is evil.
Go ahead and instill that sense of Stockholm syndrome.
And if I can be quite honest, was probably one of the more chilling and disturbing moments in the campaign was how Autumn treated those two half elves, or the human and the half elf. And then just telling them at one point, you can just go. I'm done with you. I have no need of you anymore.
Yeah.
And just letting them loose.
Because we were close to the surface. We were in the
basements of Gauntlgrim.
Yeah. And then it's like, but we already know we're being watched.
Yeah, already know you're being watched.
And
I'm
just like, you're just gonna let them go, huh? So you can tell people about us. So now I have to kill.
So now you have to go track down and kill them.
And I did.
And it's that kind of attitude where you don't have to, but you're going to.
Well, it's what that character would do. It's role playing, right?
Yeah. And so I think if you're playing an evil game, you want to make sure, number one, that those kinds of actions and those sorts of decisions are okay with everybody. Some people are going to get way more into it than others. Some people are going to find a character that works for them more than others. There are obviously some options that are better suited to it: necromancers, death priests, and oathbreakers. We had all three of those in the evil game.
We never got to what Emma got up to with Brondel.
With Brondel
in the catacombs of Gauntlgrim.
So yeah, I mean, with her Oathbreaker, it took you 27 days to cross through the territory of Gauntlgrim, and for the most part, she spent that entire time desecrating the tombs of the ancient Dwarven Empire that was there, animating those corpses, and generally creating a big problem for the people of Gauntlgrim. And so maybe at one point I had hoped to use your other characters from another game to, go after your party, and have you sort of fight characters from the other campaign. But yeah, all of those things are sort of evil acts. Gustav becoming a lich and summoning the spirits of dead drow to gain information from them. Those are evil things. Encouraging other people to excess. Is in the way that he did, and the manner he did, and the types of things he wanted to kill that person.
Kind of an exerting gluttony on others.
Yes, encouraging gluttony in others was certainly the reasons why he did that. Were certainly evil. So, I mean, I don't know. I had a great time with the campaign. We've run a couple of semi-evil campaigns in the past, and there's certainly been evil party members in sort of mixed alignment parties that we've played in.
Oh, yeah.
And normally I don't mind that. I expect that, number one, if this is the game that we're playing, the game's got to go on. And so any conflict that arises between players is either handled out of character. Hey, man, what you're doing with your character isn't working for me. I'm really liking my character and liking yours. Let's make sure that we find a way in game to not have them come to blows. That's a perfectly acceptable solution to it. Some parties like player versus player combat, and they sort of relish the opportunity for players to fight one another. I don't know that I've ever really been a part of a group like that. It doesn't seem very fun to me.
Well, you end up with a TPS, a total party suicide.
Right.
And basically, if your party just kills itself.
Yeah, then what's going to happen? There needs to be, so I'd say with an evil campaign, there does need to be some element of trust that you, even if it's artificial, even if when you're sitting down to make characters, you say, your characters need to find some way to trust each other so that we can have a game. I think that's perfectly reasonable for a DM to say. Once you've built that sort of like, this is the party, we're not going to turn on each other, then whatever you do is whatever you do. If you want to engage in a massacre, the Death Cleric offering all the deaths that would occur in Minzabranzan and then casting 5 earthquake spells. Hundreds of drow dying in those moments. That's a pretty evil act. Mirkul is not a good deity.
No.
He relishes death and wishes for everyone to fear him and the act of dying. And so that's what Gustav's going to do. But yeah, I'd say that's kind of an evil campaign. They're very fun. Try it out if you've never done it before. But it's different than a regular campaign.
Yeah. Well, definitely in the like you were talking about earlier, in the shifting idea of what evil is and what characters that normally in the monster manual are considered evil. Like a drow is evil, but Drist was good.
Right.
So my question, did Drist just fuck it up? I mean,
did he just
ruin the game by being like, hey, I know I was supposed to be evil, but now you have to think about killing me.
Right.
You're introducing, moral ambiguity.
I mean, I like the moral ambiguity of it.
Yeah.
I like it because it does force players to think, I'm going to go in this goblin warren and we're going to clear that fucker out. Maybe they do need to think. There are goblin babies in there. There are goblin families. If this is a world like, say, the Forgotten Realms, then those goblins are not maybe capital E evil, but they are so marginalized, so maligned, and so mistrusted that they have to resort to raiding and thievery and things like that to survive. If every time a peasant sees a goblin, they go to lynch it, then of course the goblins are going to be like, yeah, we live in this cave because they're not inviting us into the city.
Right.
If we tried to build a goblin city, they'd just burn it to the ground.
What came first, the goblin or the hate?
Exactly. And so that's the kind of world I like playing in. So it makes characters think like, okay, is this an okay thing to do? Is it not? At the same time, sometimes players don't want that. They want to kick down the door and play some damn D&D and not have to worry about it. In that case, I recommend that your goblins be spawned in the pits of hell from the mud and ooze of whatever, and that they spring forth fully formed from the muck, ready to don armor and attack the party.
Right.
Those are the
evil monstrosities.
They are evil monstrosities. But you take a setting, say like Middle-earth, which just released the Adventures in Middle-earth role-playing for 5th edition. I'm excited to see how they handle monsters, what that kind of looks like. But you can take that and go, okay, these are corrupted elven spirits. They're sort of under the influence of this evil god who may or may not be able to like take control of them, but they certainly exerts a will and a force on them that causes them to be evil. At that point, when they are trying to kill you, when they are trying to raise your village to the ground, when those goblins come in and are stealing your cattle and poisoning your wells, does it matter if good and evil are relative in those moments? Survival becomes more important, and so you retaliate, you do that. Maybe after the fact, you're like, oh, well, why would they do that? What's going on? That's kind of how I view the creatures that are of evil alignment. I don't know if it's Drist's fault, but he seems to have opened the door for the redeemed evil, wounded hero kind of stereotype.
Yeah.
Whether or not your party or table really likes that or not is up to you. But
yeah, thanks, RA.
Yeah, it can be. There's other ways to play Drow. There's other ways to play a Drow in a party of non-Drow, and they don't all have to be Drist-like. It could just be.
Rovian certainly wasn't.
No,
He was a man of singular focus.
Singular focus.
And he saw that through to the end.
Yeah, or in the same way that I've tried to play Zelo, where it's like he's deferential to priestly figures. He's incredibly paranoid. Given the environment that he comes from, but at the same time, he realizes that cooperation is going to get him more than attempting to work against other people. Right. Now he's one bad day away from being that kind of evil that's just like, I just need to kill you all before you kill me.
Right. You're going to kill me eventually.
You're going to kill me eventually, so I need to get to you first. But that's just kind of the way I've played him, and it's one of many ways to play sort of redeemed. Yeah.
He's neutral evil, right?
Right now he's chaotic neutral.
Oh, chaotic neutral.
I've played him kind of chaotic neutral, but I have sort of considered dipping my toe into being more. We started the game, everybody thought I was evil, and so they'd be like, oh, just have the Drow torture him. And be like, hold up, man. Just because I'm a Drow, you're going to think I torture people? That's not cool. And he got really upset about that.
Yeah. Stereotype the Drow.
Stereotyping that Drow.
Profiled him.
Jeez. I don't know. So those are some ways that you can work evil into your campaign. I would recommend, particularly if you've been playing a long time and you've been playing the same types of adventures and the same types of stuff, give an evil game a shot.
Yeah.
Like, get some people you trust, get some people you like playing the game with, and be like, let's try playing an evil campaign. What does it look like if we are the servants of an evil wizard and are carrying out his plan, and at some point is like, well, we can just kill this guy and take over it for him? What happens if you take a traditional game like, say, Princes of the Apocalypse or Rise of Tiamat, and you go, what if we played it from the opposite perspective? What if we're members of Cult of the Dragon, trying to make alliances with dragons, thwart the Harpers, court the Zentarum, get them in on the action? What if you're trying to build a cult to elemental evil and insinuate yourself into the local environment? Like, oh, we're just hippy-dippy environmentalists over here. No, don't peek behind the curtain on us trying to summon an elder elemental evil into the world.
Right.
Those are the kinds of things you can get up to in an evil campaign, and if you've never done it, try it out, even if it's just for a short campaign, and see what it's like.
And blow off some steam.
Blow off some steam, and have some consequence-free gaming, where it doesn't matter what you do, because you don't care.
Yeah. Good times.
Evil is objective.
Yes.
It can be detected. Maybe not in fifth edition, less so. Excuse me. That was that egg burger coming back up.
Oh, man.